The story takes place on a massive spaceship called the Avalon. It is traveling through the dark of space on a long trip to a new world for humans to live on, known as Homestead 2. At this moment, the ship is totally quiet. The vessel is flying on its own using autopilot. All 258 crew members and the 5,000 travelers are currently in a deep sleep called hibernation. Suddenly, the ship flies through a field of space rocks that makes its protective shields very weak. The computer moves power to the front shield, but the ship is still on a path to hit a giant asteroid. The rock slams into the ship, causing many things to break. The ship tries to fix itself, but one of the sleeping pods accidentally turns on. The traveler who wakes up is a man named Jim Preston, who is a mechanical engineer. His pod opens, and a robot voice helps him wake up. It tells him he has been asleep for 120 years and that the ship is only 4 months away from reaching the new planet. The voice says he can spend his time enjoying the fancy areas of the ship. Jim gets instructions about his ID bracelet, his room, and the fun things he can do before they land. Jim is nervous but excited to meet the other people. He gets ready and walks into a classroom meant for a large group of students. He looks worried when a hologram starts talking about the situation on Earth. The hologram calls Earth too crowded and too expensive. Jim tries to ask questions, but the hologram tells him to wait until the end. Jim keeps asking why he is the only one there. He soon realizes the hologram is just a recording and can't really talk to him. He goes to look for other people in the main area of the ship, but it is totally empty. An automated computer desk tries to help him, but when Jim asks to talk to a real person, it sends him to find a worker. When he finds no one there either, he asks to talk to the captain. He goes to the bridge, and even though he can't go inside, he can see through the glass that all the officers are still asleep in their pods. Jim eventually goes to a special room where you can see the stars. There, he finds out the ship is actually 90 years away from the new planet. He realizes he woke up much too early. He runs back to the main area and sends a message to Earth asking for help because he doesn't know how to go back to sleep. The computer tells him that the message is very expensive and will take 55 years to get an answer back. Jim is heartbroken. He walks around and finds the ship's bar, where he finally sees another person. While he is talking to the bartender, something feels a bit off. When the bartender goes to get him a drink, Jim realizes the man is actually an android named Arthur. Jim wants to get more information from him, but the robot doesn't understand how it's possible for Jim to be awake so early. The next day, Jim goes to the cafeteria. He quickly learns that most of the good food is only for gold-class passengers. Since he has a basic ticket, he has to drink plain coffee. He tries to use his engineering tools to fix his sleeping pod. He manages to make it turn on and lies down inside, but nothing happens. Next, he tries to break into the crew's sleeping area, but that doesn't work either. As time passes, more small things start breaking around the ship. Jim keeps going to the bar to drink and talk to Arthur. The robot gives him some advice that makes Jim decide to stop worrying. He breaks into a fancy gold-class room and tries to have some fun. He tries all the restaurants, the games, and the movies. But as more time goes by, he becomes very miserable because he is all alone. One day, he gets drunk and wanders around the sleeping pods. He finds a room with spacesuits made for walking outside the ship. Jim puts on a suit, goes into the airlock, and opens the door. Once he is outside, he is amazed by the view of the stars. He is the only person awake to see it. He turns off the magnets on his boots and floats in space, feeling very sad. He comes back inside and takes off the suit, but then he goes back to the door without a suit on. He is ready to end his life, but he changes his mind at the last second and runs back inside. As he runs, he trips and falls next to a pod holding a woman named Aurora. He looks for her name in the ship's computer and listens to her old interviews. He starts to fall in love with her. He spends his days sitting by her pod and reading the books she wrote. He talks to Arthur about how strange it is that he is on a trip for a better life, but he woke up early and will never get there. He feels he has found the perfect woman, but she is stuck in her sleep. Jim keeps thinking about her and starts to wonder if he should wake her up. He talks to the robot about it, but the robot doesn't understand the problem. If Jim wakes her up for his own sake, he is basically making her stay on the ship until she dies. Jim decides not to do it at first, but as more time goes by, he can't stop thinking about it. Finally, he changes his mind. He goes to her pod and makes it turn on. As she starts to wake up, he hides in his room. A little bit later, he goes to the main hall hoping to see her. There she is, looking just as confused as he was a year ago. Jim tells her they are the only ones awake. He takes her to see the stars and tells her he can't get in touch with the crew or fix the ship. Aurora is very scared and wants to go back to sleep. Jim explains that there is no equipment on the ship that can put them back into hibernation. He is basically telling her they are trapped. He tells her she should rest. Jim goes back to the bar feeling very guilty about what he did. He asks Arthur the robot to keep it a secret and not tell Aurora that he was the one who woke her up. The next day, Aurora goes to the computer desk to ask about the pods. Jim joins her, and they go to get breakfast. While they are leaving, the computer desk has a small glitch. In the cafeteria, Aurora realizes Jim has been eating the same boring food for a year and gets him a better meal. They talk about fixing the pods. Unlike Jim, Aurora doesn't want to give up. She searches the medical room and reads all the documents. She even tries to break into the crew area. Jim notices that more things are breaking on the ship. Later, Aurora starts to accept her life on the Avalon. She writes in her journal, runs around the ship, and swims in the pool. She decides to interview Jim for her book. She asks why he left Earth. Jim gives her the company's slogans at first, but then says he wanted to build things on a new world. Later, Aurora shares her story. She has a ticket to go to the new world, live there for a year, and then come back to Earth. She wanted to be the first writer to ever do that. Aurora slowly gives up on finding a fix, and Jim tries to make her happy. He takes her dancing, to the movies, and to play basketball. He takes her to the bar to meet Arthur. She starts to relax until she remembers their situation. Jim feels terrible about what he did to her. Later, he builds her a small model of a famous building to cheer her up. They go on a real date at the bar and share stories about their families. After dinner, Jim takes her to the airlock. They put on spacesuits and go for a walk outside together. Jim finally has someone to share the beautiful view with. They float together in space and then come back inside and kiss. They start living like a married couple, eating and exercising together. Jim even finds a garden area and brings her flowers. One day, the ship passes a beautiful red star. It is Aurora's birthday, so they celebrate at a restaurant and the bar. Jim goes to the bathroom to get a ring he made for her. While he is gone, Arthur the robot tells Aurora that Jim woke her up on purpose. Arthur didn't realize it was a secret. When Jim comes back, she is in total shock. She runs away, feeling angry and terrified. Jim goes back to his room to find all her things gone. Every time he tries to talk to her, she runs away. One night, she goes to his room and starts hitting him because she is so angry. She tells him he killed her because she will never reach the new world. Jim tries to apologize over the speakers, saying he fell in love with her, but she won't forgive him. As they are fighting, the ship has a major heart attack. A huge error happens and the main computers shut down. Jim gets stuck in an elevator. Aurora goes to the cafeteria and sees that Jim planted a real tree there. Suddenly, they hear a new voice on the speakers. It is the deck chief, Gus Manzo. They both run to find him. Gus is confused about why 3 pods failed. He takes them to the bridge and sees that the ship is breaking down. He tells them they have to check the systems by hand. As they walk, a robot almost falls on them. Jim and Aurora tell him that things have been breaking for a long time. Gus checks the pods and realizes what Jim did to Aurora. He thinks it is a terrible thing to do. Gus starts feeling very sick from hibernation sickness. That night, the gravity fails while Aurora is swimming. The water turns into a big ball and she almost drowns. The gravity comes back just in time. They find Gus and go to the bridge. They discover that something hit the ship 2 years ago and it has been struggling ever since. If they don't fix it, the ship will explode. Gus is dying and there is no way to save him. He gives Jim his electronic badge so they can go into the engine room. Then, he passes away. Suddenly, the ship starts shaking violently. Jim tells Aurora he needs her help. They run to the engine room, but the gravity fails again. They find the problem in the power area. When they open a door, the air starts sucking them out because there is a hole in the ship. They manage to plug the hole. Jim realizes there are more holes. They find where the meteor hit the computer that controls the reactor. They find a new part and fix it, but the reactor is still too hot. It needs to be vented, but the computer won't do it. Jim says he has to go outside the ship to open the vent door by hand. He puts on a suit and gives Aurora the badge. He tells her he might not make it back. She tells him to come back because she can't be alone. Aurora goes to the control room where it is getting very hot. Jim gets to the vent door but realizes he has to hold it open himself while the fire comes out. Aurora doesn't want him to do it, but they have to save the 5,000 people on the ship. The fire blasts out and pushes Jim away into space. His tether breaks and his suit starts leaking air. Aurora puts on a suit and flies out to get him. She catches him and brings him back to the medical room, but he has no heartbeat. She uses the chief's badge to make the medical pod try to wake him up. The machine works, and Jim comes back to life. Aurora finally forgives him. Later, Jim discovers that the medical pod can actually put one person back into hibernation. He tells Aurora to get in so she can reach the new world. But Aurora decides she would rather stay awake with Jim. He gives her the ring, and they live their lives together on the ship. 88 years later, the ship finally arrives at Homestead 2. The crew wakes up and walks into the main hall. Instead of a cold ship, they find a huge forest with trees and birds. They find a message from Aurora telling the story of the beautiful life she and Jim had while everyone else was sleeping.